All right, folks. So, welcome to another episode of Powerful Perspectives, where we bring you world changers, entrepreneurs, athletes, people that are just doing big things in the world and making a huge difference. And today is no exception. I've got a guy who is extremely special to me personally, but I can't wait to share his story with you guys and share this man's heart, his spirit, and all about his family with you and kind of where he came from and where he is today. I've got Mr. Keith Callaway Sr. with us today, and I cannot wait to introduce this man to you guys right after this. Let's get started. It is ultimately important for you to look at your goals, truly what you want to do in your life, and then look at the people who you spend the most time with in your life and figure out if that lines up. All right, sir. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Man, we've done this before, but we haven't done this before. You know, we haven't quite done it like this before. I've had this guy on the podcast before, but very surface level stuff. And my goal today is to definitely get below the surface of this man's story, because it's lengthy, it's interesting, it has a lot of ups and downs, twists and turns, and it has quite an incredible ending, which is still being written. But Mr. Keith Callaway Sr., man, it is an honor to have you. It's an honor to know you. And the impact that this guy's had on my life has been massive, but we're not here to talk about me today. We're here to talk about you. So let's start out with little Keith. What does it look like? Where did you grow up? What does it look like growing up? How was the family life? All that kind of stuff. Let's start with the background.
Okay. Grew up mostly in Portland, Oregon. I was third of four kids. My oldest brother, my only brother, he's older, and my older sister, they kind of had their spot in the family. Mine has always been one where I was the one to take care of everything, and it's still the case. My mom lives right next door, and that'll be the way it'll probably be until she goes to heaven. So I wouldn't call myself the anchor, but there's definitely some glue there. Also, part of my story early on that is of note is that I was a short kid. I was small and short. And when I became a freshman in high school, I remember the monumental moment that I was finally taller than a girl. Okay, so I am this peacemaker, lover kind of personality, and very relational, and yet I have this chip on my shoulder that came from all those years up to 14 years old, where I was just a small kid. I got teased. You know, I wouldn't call it bullying, but a little bit of that probably in today's terms. But I always thought the bigger they are, the harder they fall, and I've always had that chip on my shoulder. Matter of fact, I'm going to an event tomorrow that some of the big boys in my industry are going to be there, or at least we're going to be interviewed to be in this group. And I'm thinking, yeah, these guys got nothing. You know, it's so, what is it? Almost 50 years later, that kind of thing you grew up in with a mindset of it creeps back. And it is basically one of the main things that defines me. And almost everybody has that 8-year-old kid that comes out, good and bad.
No question, man. No question. So who had let's talk about impact and like kind of how your parents shaped you. Who do you feel you're more like, mom or dad?
I am much more like my dad. Very relational. My dad had a million sayings. He was from Texas, and some of them today would get him in trouble, but he had a saying for every situation. And that's not necessarily me, but I do have a story for every situation. I like to say the best part about getting older is that I have an opinion about literally almost everything now. And that was it was like my dad. He had something to say about almost everything. He didn't, it wasn't overbearing, but he loved people and he loved to hug and he loved to touch and kid around. And that definitely is me.
Yeah, without a doubt, without a doubt. Anything else other than that list you just rattled off that you admired the most about your dad?
He was a learner until the very last day. He read a lot of books, and he loved some of the people I like listening to, the John Maxwells and the Zig Ziglars. He listened to those guys, and you know, he probably put it in a little different context because I started in business when I was 19 years old. So he had a different context he was using it in, but he definitely liked to learn, and I did appreciate that always about him.
And what did he do? What was his profession?
Well, he was literally the jack of all trades. The main thing he did, he retired from a job where he was called building engineer from the Federal Reserve Bank, which means that he took care of light bulbs and heating. And when the secretary had an issue with the carpet under her desk, he would take care of that. And just a long list and a comprehensive list, a never-ending list of things to fix and maintain. And that really fit him really well, actually. I did some remodeling with him when I was young, and he wasn't fast enough to make a living at it. He gave it a try, but he really enjoyed tinkering and being part of something that became something else, fixing things.
Interesting. Same question about your mom. What are the things that you admire the most about her?
Well, the thing I admire probably most as I look back is that before goal setting was a thing, she had goals. And she had a little bit to hear her story now, her becoming a nurse about the time I was born. She had a chip on her shoulder, and she was told she'd never make it having kids and all that. Because I was third, she had 3 kids, and she was told she'd never get there. And she went back and actually shook the hand and said hi to the person that said that to her. Just to that person probably doesn't even remember it, and she admits that. But she said it was really good to go up to that person and say, "Yep, I'm a nurse," and to this day, she has goals. She's 84 years old, and she has goals this week. I talked to her yesterday about she just put another quilt in her quilting machine, and she's bound and determined to get it done by the end of the week, and then move on to the next one. And she's just got what in her mind and the people in her life important things to do, and she sets that as a task and goes for it.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So growing up the way that you grew up, what do you think unlocked that entrepreneurial spirit in you? Was there something specific that was missing? Was there, always a drive? Was there somebody that you looked up to that was an entrepreneur?
No, it was actually mostly that little kid syndrome. It was, I know I can do better. And I knew I wasn't better than everybody. That was not the issue. I just knew I could do better than where I was and who I was. And I was raised in a decent home. We never lacked for anything. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that I was about materialism. When we got married, my wife and I, over 39 years ago, I was working for minimum wage, and it wasn't long. And I already knew before I got married that this isn't going to last. And about 2 months to the day after we got married, I quit that job and literally did laughingly known as anything for a buck. And there were more dollars than minimum wage for sure. And so that's how the journey started. And then finally I became a licensed contractor, and then started the name you know now, K&L Industries. That was in 1984. For all you young people, I was talking to one of my employees in the office, and he was born in the 2000s. And somebody else in the office said, "Yeah, we have T-shirts older than you." Yeah. So,
That's true. I probably have t-shirts older than him.
yeah, yeah. And so that was kind of funny to kind of term it that way.
So let's talk about your early on entrepreneurial journey real quick, and I want to dig into plenty more family stuff. But I think a lot of people find themselves in entrepreneurship because, and I talked about this a lot late last week with folks. Like, I believe that in America, entrepreneurship is it's directly connected to freedom, right? Like, I don't think that people choose entrepreneurship because they want more money, because quite frankly, in the beginning, that's not always the case, right? Like, in a lot of cases, people choose an entrepreneurial journey that could in fact go make more money that year working for somebody else, right? But yet they choose entrepreneurship because it provides a certain level of freedom, a certain level of creativity. And I believe, that is at the foundation of what makes America great, right? Is that we get to choose our own path and blaze our own path as entrepreneurs. So what was that like for you early on as you stepped into it? Obviously, if you were making minimum wage and you could go put a couple more dollars together somewhere else, but you probably quickly figured out that it wasn't always easy either, right? So what was that like in the beginning, kind of cutting your teeth as an entrepreneur?
Well, it was struggle. Of course, it was struggle. It's kind of meant to be. For those that get in business nowadays, I like to smile and say, you're going to have more faith. Your faith is going to grow in this journey. And that's what happened, of course. And when you're responsible for every piece of the process, the bottom line, the top line, and the tires on the pickup, all of those things that affect all that, when you're responsible for all of that, it's a lot to think about. And I really truthfully didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't care. I look back and wonder, why in the world didn't I have any fear? Like, why didn't I doubt myself? And that doesn't make me special necessarily. I just didn't. I just no, I can do better. And
I think, and you tell me if you agree, I think there's a lot of people that you and I both know that have that same lack of, I don't know whether it's lack of common sense or, right in the beginning, it's like you're too oblivious to see reality, right? And what a gift it is to be able to step into that.
It is. It's really better in most ways not to see the reality for a while. And then you don't even see it all. One of the first, about the fourth or fifth roofing job I took on was a terribly steep roof, and I got that job done, and then the people wanted me to take a tree down. And I got up there and started sawing, and it fell on the neighbor's house. Yeah, that was a rough week, because you know what? Worst scenario, those neighbors were both attorneys. A brand new liability insurance policy that I had to call and say, yeah, I just ruined the neighbor's house. And well, I haven't cut down a sizable tree since then, let me tell you. But we live and we learn to stay in our zone, and that was definitely not in it. But I thought, oh, I can do this. I had no fear. Should have, but I didn't.
So for those people out there who are listening to this and might be considering starting that journey, I ask this as a loaded question because I'm pretty certain I know the answer. How many, maybe not smashing a tree through somebody's house, but along your journey of this many years as an entrepreneur, how many of those types of situations do you think you've had? The oh crap situation of, what did we do? How did we get into this? And I asked that question for a reason. I'll clarify after you answer.
Innumerable. I really think that after 38 years in business, I really should have kept a journal. It's easy to remember the good stuff, a lot of it, but it's harder to remember the bad stuff. Like, I'll go into a neighborhood and I'll remember something that happened. It's like, oh man, I completely forgot about that one, and I probably should have kept a journal. It would be hilarious, really, because a lot of people would relate, but the numbers are like, it was every week. we busted drive line on a truck, or we, who knows, like just all kinds of stuff. A lot of it was equipment related. I started out in the paving industry with worn out equipment. So anytime you do that, you become the mechanic. Jury rigger, you're always fixing stuff just to get through the job. And then you realize that's good enough. And so you do the next job, and you're always just reacting.
Yeah. And I ask that because I think that so many people out there, have this idea that like there's a perfect time to, enter business or to start a business, or, if I have this much money, it'll be okay. And it's just not true, right? I ask that question because I go through the same thing, right? There's something literally almost every week, and sometimes multiple times a week, sometimes every day for weeks, where you think to yourself, how am I going, like, how did we end up here? And how do we get from here back to what we refer to as normal, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I know your story. I know how many challenging years there were, and how many ups and downs, and how many things out of your control you faced, right? Economic downturns, going through the post 9/11 time period, and then 2008, and all of these things. And I truly, this podcast series is called Powerful Perspectives, because I truly believe, and I believe you agree with me, that it's the way that you look at those things that allows them to become gifts and learning experiences, as opposed to absolute misery, right? And it's truly, when you shift your thinking in life, when you shift your perspective to, as they say, things happening for you, not to you, that everything changes. Is there a period of time in that journey that you look back to and say, that was the case before? Like, you looked at things differently. Was there a particular time where something changed for you, the way that you looked at things, or the results that you started getting that maybe you can track back to the way that you looked at things, or that shift happening for you?
Yes. It's not completely my story to tell, but about a little over 6 years ago, my oldest son, Keith Jr., was in business with me for 13 years prior. He needed to go into rehab. It was causing devastation in the family and in the business, what he was doing, and he went into rehab. And the way I put it is that so did I. I had built so many bad habits during that period of time, and my life needed a complete reset, and including the business, because the business was, a bit of a disaster after a couple of years of legal issues and all kinds of stuff that came from all that. And as we came out of that, him not having a driver's license put him on the job site. It ends up that other than needing to work deeply on his people skills, he was amazing at production. He was really good at producing things with an end result in mind. And I was okay at it. And since I was the guy in the business that was older, that's what I always did. And what we discovered, because he didn't have a driver's license, somebody had to go do the bids. So he was with the crew, and I went and did all the bids. And what it ended up doing is, what I call it, is I started my possibility thinking. Well, is it possible that I was in the wrong spot and that he was too? And well, the answer is yes, that's possible. And then, so let's dig deeper into this. And then we couldn't keep up with the productivity that we were having. So we hired back another salesman. And the salesman we had prior to the recession. And he started selling jobs, but it still wasn't enough. And then we did, as you know my story, we hired this guy named Al. And he was a nut. He did what he called the guerrilla sales technique. I still don't know what it means to say that, and yet it had something to do with high pressure and a lot of energy and whatever. So we figured out that we couldn't out sell our productivity, which was just the opposite of what we had before. Like, we could always outproduce our sales typically, but now it was different. We could produce more than we could sell. So long story short, in the possibility thinking, something else that happened about a year or so after Al came on board, and the two salesmen were selling like crazy, is the first sales guy, Lewis, ended up with a contract for one customer that would double our gross sales from the previous year. And so we started just going after that work, along with the other stuff they were selling, of course, because you don't want to go backwards, make that your only thing that year. And so we got about halfway through that work for that customer, and it was on several different sites. We got about halfway through, and we sat down and we said, you know what? We really can do this. As a matter of fact, not only is it possible, this is what we're called to do. This is what we're supposed to do. And we're supposed to grow bigger and do more and include more people. So within the next year, we hired 2 more salespeople and ended up producing. And then right after that year, after we produced all that, what was double then COVID hit. And that's when the little guy syndrome really came out, because I was determined almost to the point of being angry. We absolutely will not give up. We will not lay anybody off, and we will grow through this season. We will do it. And I made all these declarative statements and had no control, really. But we started seeing it happening. And so I go back to that idea of possibility mindset. Is it possible? Well, the answer should be screamed, yes, it's possible. Now, is it going to take some effort and some work and to be smarter than I was for all those 30 years of getting to that point? Absolutely. But what made it possible to even see it was that we, through circumstances, were forced into the right seat, into the right spot in the business. And does that mean we can't do the other things? No, it doesn't. But so what became after that for me, was it possible that I was standing in the way? And that's what I've realized in the last year or two, is that what I have to do is remove myself enough so that I'm not standing in the way of the things that these thoroughbreds were hiring, and Keith Jr. and these gals in the office that are amazing. I need to get out of their way. After 30 some years of being 100% responsible for literally everything, that's a big task. And so I'm still asking myself, is it even possible? Well, it's getting easier, but it's hard work.
Yeah, that my follow-up question to that one is rooted in, and I think we've probably had this conversation at a high level before, but you explaining that the way that you just did, I'm sure everybody listening and watching this wants to know, like, what is it like? How old were you when that change happened? When Keith Jr. came back and got back into the business with no driver's license? How old were you?
I was 52 years old, and we were pretty broke.
50. So, for everybody listening, and I want to drive this home, because I think that people put standards on their lives that are unreasonable in today's world. I think people value the wrong things. This is a guy that did something a certain way for 52 years of his life, was essentially forced by circumstances into a position, and one thing at a time started to fall into place. What was that like? I mean, from a feeling standpoint, like, was it surreal to watch all of this? Obviously you're doing things to push this along, but like, to watch these things start to fall into place, because I've known you for, I believe, 3.5 or 4 years now, something
Mhm.
like that. And so, I came into the picture, not too long after that. And so, but all I know is this version, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to get, your perspective on what was that like for you to watch? And at 50, because I think for a lot of people at 52 years old, they start to think not about possibilities, but impossibilities. And so my goal of asking you this question is to help other people unlock what's possible for them. And then after you explain what that was like, I want you to explain how different your life is today than it was at 51 years old. And I will tell you, I got emotional listening to you tell that story because I know what it's like today. And so I'm so excited for you to share this.
It's yeah, you use the word surreal. I'm just a simple guy. I'm not sure I 100% know exactly what that word means, but is it real? Is this really happening? Is We sit down for a quick meeting this morning and had our production team meeting and shared some of the numbers of this year, and we're going to smash the numbers. Literally, we didn't set our goals high enough, which who would have known? I have no idea that this is going to happen. It's because every portion of the company is clicking. Um, so as I look back and I say, well, not how did we get here, because I know the path, and yet why didn't it happen earlier? Why couldn't we make it happen earlier? I have to go back to, well, we were just each of us in the business were just doing the wrong things. We weren't at our capacity. We weren't at 100%. It wasn't our sweet spot. And so I'll
Do
go
you
back
think
to this.
that was because of pattern? Like
Yeah, it
just
was.
that's what you always did?
Yep, it was 100% pattern. I don't know how many people watch and go to church, but you walk into church and there's these traditions. And if you were the first time there, you'd ask, why did they do that? Why did they do that? And many of the things that happen, and there's probably not much of a reason for it. Well, that's the way it got to be. Well, I was the guy that went out, put my work boots on, and I went out to work and I went and laid asphalt. That's what I did. And ends up now the company is doing so much better with me out of all that and just going to visit the job site every now and then. More as a casual visit, more as a cultural check-in. Just how does it feel? How does the crew feel? Are they energized? That's my sweet spot. So how does it feel now compared to before? I still have to wonder, is this even possible that this is happening? And yet I need to, again, as always in every part of my life, not take it for granted. All those crazy things that I could put on that list of dangerous, crazy things that happened in the business, equipment breakdowns and all of that, there was a lot of gratitude that I learned to have no matter what. And like you said, alluded to a few minutes ago, that I had spent 52 years developing these habits, and the habits finally started paying off from a function standpoint. But I remember very clearly when I was 28 years old, there were certain habits that I put in place, and that's been 30 years ago, that are paying off today. And I look at that and I say, well, glory be to God. I am grateful. Those habits that I put into place were a couple of spiritual disciplines that I was diving into wisdom because I was on my heels. By that time, when I made that decision, when I was 28 years old, I had 5 kids and 6th one was coming along, and a business that had to support all of that, and 5 or 6 guys. And I was on my heels. I was out of balance in every area of my life. And I had to have wisdom that's bigger than me. I had to. I had no choice. That's the way it felt, and that was certainly the actual case. I had to have something bigger better, grander, smarter than me. And so I made the spiritual choice to do certain things in my life and daily, forever, that would get me to that point. And then when I became 52 years old, after suffering, literally suffering at times, we had some good years, and it was a cyclical business, and it was feast or famine. A lot of good days in the summer and fall, but every late winter and early spring, I was broke. But never a regret though, because I was living the right way, doing the right things, and treating people the right way.
I just want to point out for everybody something important in case you guys didn't digest what he just said the way that I did. That what you believe you're preparing yourself for and what you're actually being prepared for are sometimes two completely different things. And when I get to hear you tell this story, and I get to hear you say, like, I get to go visit the job sites and see how everybody's doing today. How are they feeling, and how are they? I can't help but think back to like all these years that you were probably trying to figure out all these business challenges, right? The typical, what people would view as business challenges, when in all reality, you were figuring them out the whole time through the spiritual discipline that you were exhibiting, right? Pouring into yourself so that when the day came that all of this aligned properly, you just stepped right into it, man. And like, what a gift, right? Like, all glory to God is the only thing that you can say, because it's, I say this often about my life, like, there's just no way that I could pull off some of the things that happened to me.
Yeah.
There's just no way. And so when you think back to that, and you think back to, the alignment that you actually had the whole time, just waiting for that to fall into place. So my next question is, do you think there were times that you maybe weren't listening enough to what you were supposed to be doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. But glory be to God, because that's what puts me now in my 50s with a little bit of wisdom, with a little bit of insight and understanding. And now I can actually live up to our company motto, which is transforming lives, one shovel at a time. I literally can, with some understanding, help my people shovel the crap out of their lives if that's what they decide they want to do. And I can help them with goals. I can help them with coaching them in a way that will get them to their next level, whatever that is, even if it's not here. And you're right, that kind of thinking, I've had a lot of employees over the years come and go. And in each case, I have so few regrets, because I was already doing some of those things. I was already helping them if I could, transforming lives to some degree. We just finally, in the last couple of years, put it on paper and said, this is what we're about. No matter what dollars come through the door, no matter who our customer is, no matter who our employees are, this is what we're about. This is what we're going to do every day. It gives some freedom, clarity, a lot of clarity.
It is incredible to watch the alignment of that. And for those people out there, because I really believe there's a lot of people out there that have that kind of deep-rooted goal, that's how they would like to live, right? Like truly making an impact, making a difference instead of making a living.
Yeah.
And I believe it was the same for me for a long time in my life, as kind of what you're describing. It's like you get so caught up trying to make money that you actually don't think that those two things go together.
Yep.
And I'm here to tell you guys, listen closely to this. When you get that put in the right order, This guy's a living example of it. Everything multiplies. Everything multiplies. And it's a lot easier, right? It's like when you look down at the paper after the first quarter and you say, like, we didn't set our goals high enough. That's a result of incredible alignment, right? And you said it, everything's clicking. People in the company are aligned. The mission is clear, right? What you're trying to accomplish is clear. And my next question is about your amazing and incredible better half, who I'll just let you describe her in general, what she means to you, what she means to the company, and what she means to anybody that she interacts with that gets the pleasure of meeting her.
Well, one of our core values is around here is truthful and transparent. And I think that Keith Jr. and I could probably get away with being less that way, perhaps, but she can't. No, it's just the way it is the way it is, and she's not. She's a little brash about it, but I wouldn't think that anybody calls it mean or overbearing, because she is what I've always called the mom of the world. And she's given you, whenever you get that truthful moment, that transparent moment, there's either tears or there's a fire, sometimes both, that come from her that is incredible. Or they're just in the moment. In the moments, in the just the businessy moments that go on. She was talking recently about the fact that I never would have thought 3 or 4 years ago that I would literally dissect my life by systems and processes. Like, she's becoming an amazing business person and doesn't even know she's doing it. Like, she's asking these questions that are high level business questions. And I know that but more important than that, I know that you've witnessed her talking to somebody that kind of thought in the moment they were somebody. And she basically gave him, "Don't you dare," and then gave the little speech that came after that. And he just went, "Oh my gosh, what just happened here? Did I just get my butt burned?" And we just looked at him and said, "Oh yeah, you sure did." And I think before that conversation, he thought he was pretty cool, right? And afterwards, he walked away going, "Yeah, I'm not much here," but imagine living with that for 39 years. the challenge in life that she's given me. One of my kids was telling a story about the last 4 years of his life's been a real struggle, self-employed, entrepreneurship, and he said that probably the hardest part is that my wife never complained once. Not once. He's doing a little bit better now, but she never complained during that whole hard time. And I would say the same for mine. Yet it wasn't 4 years. It was a lot longer. It was decades of cycles and struggle. And she started buying Christmas presents every year in September or October because she knew in December we wouldn't have money. And she planned all these things that were just part of it. They were just part of her thinking. That's the way she supported the family and supported me. And so as I talk about her, I'm going to get for a moment into one of my regrets that until recently, I didn't really push into the opportunity that's been in front of me, in that I am a peacemaker by nature, not just one that maintains the peace. I want to make it if I have to. And what that did for her is it didn't challenge her. So I would say the first 20 plus years of our marriage, I didn't push in. I didn't go to the places that would have made us even stronger. That in our mid 40s, early 50s, that would have probably gotten us to where we are now. Because I I wasn't afraid to go do any job that was in front of me, but I didn't have the courage at home to push into the things in our marriage and in our household that made me feel like I was messing with the peacefulness. And I tell that story a lot to anybody that's willing to listen, because that's where you need the most courage. Anybody can go pave a driveway. Anybody, honestly, not anybody, but most people can run a business, a good business. But if you're not digging in at home and those relationships that count for eternity, then you're missing the boat. And I missed it for a couple of decades, probably longer actually. And we've had some real struggles, even in the last year, because of some things that I didn't do, that I did and didn't do 40 years ago. Some things that I did before we were married and didn't want to face it. And so if you want to pay the price, keep the peace. You know, I guess is the deal. I like peace. I love peace. And yet sometimes if she says she loves you, then you need to believe her and you need to dig into the deep spots. So there you go. We got into marriage advice there. How about that?
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. So talk to me about the value that you place on conflict today. That's a little extension of what you just talked about, but whether it's in, personal life, business, it's been a big growth area for me. And I know that, from what I see from the people that I get to interact with, the real value is generally on the other side of conflict, disagreement, misunderstanding. So I'm interested to hear your perspective on the value you place today on conflict.
Well, being a peacemaker, my nature says I should hate it, and I kind of do. My tendency is to avoid it. But there's another piece of me that loves relationships. I like going deep. I like getting to the next level, a couple of levels down with people, and feel like it's a waste of time if I stay on the surface. And because of that, I can't stay there. And so there are times now when I'll push an envelope, or I'll have a conversation, or I'll jump in the middle of a conflict just because I know the outcome is going to be better than if I didn't. And I don't mean a conflict between two other people. Sometimes I'll navigate some of those. But if I need to have a conflict with somebody, if I need to have a hard conversation, then I go back to some of the tools that I put in my life. I count to 5. I commit myself to, or I count down, the 5-second rule, that book by Mel Robbins. There's things that happen there that change my life. I don't love conflict. And so, but I need to walk into it. And then I realize going in that I may be going into somewhere between 8 and 20 seconds of completely uncomfortable. But then by then it'll work itself out and it'll be less comfortable. We're already in, and then the outcome is going to be way better. So do I like it? No, I don't like it, but I sure like the outcome. So I would rather have it in my life.
I couldn't agree more. So with your children, I know that they're all different. They're all they all do different things, some in construction, some not. What is it like? Cause I've got, 4, but they're all under 9 years old. So I haven't experienced any of this yet.
Yeah.
What is it like watching them grow, in the positive sense? And what is it like watching them when they're going through the struggle?
I would say that, of course, it's hard. No parent wants to see their child hurt. And yet, after 6 years removed from the hardest situation that I've ever had with any of my kids, A lot of wisdom comes from those situations, and you say, "Oh, struggle is so good. It's so good. I need to keep my hands off. I need to not rescue them." And that's a 100% statement. You need to not rescue them 100% of the time. And kind of a funny story. We like the teenage years because our kids were vocal. In some ways, we forced it a little bit. We led a life around here that was crazy, and we were very pointed, truthful, and transparent. We didn't have a lot of time to mess around, and so we got to the bottom of things and had a lot of conversations. We didn't like the 20s so much because these kids, they think they know so much. They get in their 30s, they're a little more humble, and those conversations start coming back, and it's kind of cool. But back to your question, they have to struggle. Lillian said a few times in the last month, letting go of the business is harder than letting go of my kids, because I know what I taught my kids. But this business sometimes is like an elementary student, an unruly one, and you have to discipline it. You have to sit on it and tell it what it's going to be, and you have to manage it and control it. And when someone wants to come in and take a piece of it and run with it, that's more nerve-wracking than the kids, because the kids they're supposed to go have struggles. They're supposed to go make messes and have to clean them up. And then you get the privilege in most cases, and hopefully most of the parents on here get this privilege to walk through that with them. And that creates a fullness and abundance in your life that is absolutely incredible.
I've never heard that analogy, but I am definitely going to steal it and use it. That the business compared to a child, and you have to discipline it, and it's true. And the comfort of having a child is that almost always when you see a child make a mistake or they get in trouble, they'll come back to the parents. The business isn't always the way that way.
No.
Right? That thing could run away from home real quick, right? And never be seen again. And so that is interesting. So on the side of, going to, arguably the worst place that, you've experienced with one of your children, and I'm sure there's plenty of other stories, but then what is it like when that turns around and you get to see the other side, when you get to see the winning and you get to see your children blossom from those challenges and, just achieve probably everything you ever hoped, and maybe more, in front of your eyes? What is that feeling like?
Well, a little bit of a silly question because the answer is obvious, but it's good to dig in on a couple of components of it. First of all, of course, it's amazing. One of the things that I write on my gratitude list almost every day, at least 2 or 3 days a week, at least, is that I am so proud of my kids that they are paying attention to God's opinion about whatever they have going on in their life. They might ask me for wisdom. They might ask me for advice. They might. But I always turn them to the keeper of the best advice. And the fact that they're doing that is humbling. It is something that I am grateful for. And like I said, it goes on my list so often. It's easy to forget the good things. It really is. It's easy to just go on with life, go on with your day, do your tasks, work your list, check the boxes. But your life will be more full. And believe me, I like full. Everybody actually does. I like joy, I like peace, and I like fullness. Right? Those are biblical principles, and those are things I strive for every day. But the fullness piece of it comes from me having the perspective that says, I'm seeing this as close as I can see it to what's reality. And the reality is that God gives good gifts. And if there's good gifts in my life, They didn't come from me. They didn't come from my systems and processes. They didn't come from the business. They didn't come from my boss. They came directly from God, because he's the loving Father that gives good gifts.
So good, man. So good. It's incredible to think about. Gratitude has been one of the things that has changed my life the most. It is, to me, the center of everything. When you can find gratitude, and we've kind of unpacked this already, but when you can find gratitude in the harshest struggles, and look for that wisdom, and realize, like, it's happened to me a few times during this conversation. I can feel God's hand on my shoulder of, like, being put in places, in relationships like the one that I have with you, where you just start to see life completely different. What a gift it is, man. And what a shift in perspective, that I want to be careful not to make statements, but rather ask you the questions of, like, when that happens to you, the feeling that you get of overwhelming gratitude, which I know you have, what does that make you want to do?
Well, I process almost everything verbally. I've learned recently to write it down. I've written some speeches and such recently that have helped me process things. So I've learned that skill recently, but I'm a verbal processor. I need the words out out in the air. And so when something's going good, when something's going amazing, and honestly, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. When a tragedy happened and someone didn't die, or somebody didn't get hurt when it literally could have been that way, then I need to verbalize. I need to make sure it's said. I need to make sure that the glory for that safety goes to the right spot. And so that's one of the main things I work on, is make sure and verbalize it.
So just, no matter where you are, you just verbalize it in the truck by yourself, in a field.
Yeah. The weirdest thing is I catch myself being that old guy that walks up to the cashier at a convenience store and saying, they ask, how are you doing? And I'll just go off. And there would be this list of gratitude. Oh man, I'm good. And let me tell you why. And they look at me like, that's not exactly what I asked for, but and guys in their 80s and 90s do this stuff all the time, right? They just go off on this story and hold up the line. And I'm becoming that guy, because it's really important to me now to say the thing. How am I? How actually am I? Well, this thing happened to me today, but you know what? This and this and this didn't happen. And I'm grateful. So.
You landed that one exactly where I was thinking, which is, like, when I have that feeling, and I after we're done with this recording, like, I just want to go share it. Like, I really want to, like, spread it like seeds out into the world. And because there was a time in my life where I didn't have that feeling. I didn't recognize how much I had to be grateful for, and how it has changed my life. I want everybody to feel that, and that is truly the definition of transforming lives one shovel at a time. It's like, when you teach people that, all the rest of the success and the things that you're searching so hard for, they start searching for you.
Yeah, and when they arrive, they mean so much less from the standpoint of like, it's important to get your goals. I get all that, but then you can look back at the journey and say, actually, the journey was the best part. And I don't usually use the word journey. I usually call it a quest, Because if you think about the Lord of the Rings and these others that were on a quest, it's the way I put it, it's wrought with peril. It's full of problems,
Yeah.
like life-defying problems. And I love the quest.
So that leads me to my last question. What does the next 5 years look like? What does that quest look like for you? Where are your priorities? What are you trying to accomplish? What means the most as you get to this point in your life where things are really falling into place, right? Like you feel like there's just a massive rhythm to what you're doing. What does that look like? How big are the goals? And as we talked a couple of times throughout this, how do you restrict yourself from having too small of goals at this point in your life? Probably because the same reason we all do it, of reality. What does the next 5 years look like, and how will you work on expanding your vision?
Well, I'm actually taking a class right now on public speaking, believe it or not. So I'm headed into that realm. I'm writing speeches. I'm writing my thoughts and my stories down, and I am going to start sharing those. So that's one thing that's happening. Another thing is, from the standpoint of industry, the paving industry in particular, about almost 3.5 years ago, I think you were in the room when a bunch of us had a conversation about what would it look like? How would we change this industry if we could? And some ideas are coming together that I think, both from Top Contractors School, some things we're doing with being able to bring companies in for retreats and help them build the culture from the ownership up, or down. Let's call it down the accountability chart, down the list. So those are the two of the directions I want to go. I want to see how much we can change the world we live in by changing business owners' minds and hearts. And not to manipulate, but just to find out what their core purpose is, their sweet spot, their the reason they were put on this earth. And it might be to run a paving company. About 15 years ago, I had a conversation with my pastor at church, and I'd set an appointment with him. And what came out of that had nothing to do with the appointment. But I said I was frustrated with the business, and seems like I was doing this thing that's so temporary. I'm paving driveways. What does that even mean? And he sat forward in his chair and looked as if he was digging into my heart. And he said, you have a calling. You have a calling because people work for you. You have a calling because you have customers. You have an industry. You have vendors that you rub shoulders with. And every one of those things matters. And you can change a portion of the world that no one else can change. And he repeated it. You have a calling. My calling, he said to me, my calling is to be a pastor. Your calling is to go to a place I can't go. So you need to go every day, go to that place, and go help those people change.
Well, you have gone, sir. You have gone, and you continue to go. You've gone there in my life, and so I say this to you often, but thank you. You made an impact on me, on my wife, on my children, on every person that interacts with us in our group and our circle of people. And your story is one that we could go on for hours here. But I'll summarize it to say this. Actually, I'll ask you one more question. Go back 6 years ago, and let's focus on, revenue numbers 6 years ago compared to today. What does that look like?
I don't know how to do the multiples, but it's
20 times.
Yeah, almost. That's what I think.
And so I say that not because numbers are important, guys, but because everything that we just talked about and the alignment of, figuring out what it is that you were put here to do, that is what this show is all about. It's uncovering those things. And I hope that for those of you who have watched or listened, I hope that there's something that was said here that you can relate to that sparks that fire, right? That allows you to do something today that maybe you were uncomfortable doing before, or you doubted yourself. Both of us are examples of, maybe at some point in our lives not believing we could be where we are. And I can only tell you I'm obsessed with getting other people there because of the feeling I wake up with every day, the gratitude that you just mentioned. And I know you feel the same, right? And it is the greatest gift in the world to be able to share other people's stories that have that same fire and just want to go, you just want to light everybody up, right? Like you just want to be able to share that feeling so much. And thank you for sharing that with me. Thank you for sharing that with so many other people. And thank you for the family you've created that's had a massive impact on my life. And for those of you out there that may not be following Keith Sr. yet, where can they find you? What platforms are you on, and how do you want them to connect with you?
Well, you can look up my name on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and of course follow the K&L stuff because it's definitely part of the story. We live and breathe this stuff. Our house is full of business, and we have a 2-year plan to get out of here. But right now I didn't even have a place to do this podcast. I had to go find a spot in a corner because there's no place for me anymore here. We keep hiring staff, and they're good people, and I want them to be able to succeed. So that's where you can find me, and reach out if you need help with anything, because I would love to help.
Love it. And we'll put KNLindustries.com. You can go to their website. You can connect with them on Instagram, Facebook, anywhere. Keith Sr., you can connect with on all the platforms. And I just appreciate the time. I appreciate you sharing the stories. And we'll do this again. We'll keep unpacking things. I think we should make this a regular occurrence, maybe.
I'd love that. Of course.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. This was another episode of Powerful Perspectives. Tune in because we got another special guest that I'm recording with this week as well that shares the same last name. And it's probably, for those of you who are familiar with this family, it is probably not who you think. I'll leave it at that. That'll be a secret for us to unveil at a later time. But until next time, guys, thank you for tuning in to Powerful Perspectives. I love you guys. Thanks for all the support. If you found value in this, please share it out. Send it to one of your friends. You never know who is in need of this information today that you can change their life by just clicking a couple of buttons. So thank you, guys. God bless, and we'll see you soon. It is ultimately important for you to look at your goals, truly what you want to do in your life, and then look at the people who you spend the most time with in your life and figure out if that lines up.